This is horrifying.
It's that scary monster.
Hi, my name is Jenn. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Jenn.
Thank you for asking me to speak tonight. I said yes because I've been told that if you're asked to speak, you need to say yes. But I resent you a little bit, so I'll add you to my fourth step. I only have a little over 6 months in the program. 3/30/2023 is my sobriety date. I asked my dad, what the hell should I talk about? And he said, just talk about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how I got to where I am. I was born in Bellingham to two young children. They were 18 years old. My dad was sort of around sometimes, and my mom was around sometimes too. She was always around, but sometimes she was in her room. She'd get these migraines and sort of disappear for a few days. And at a really young age, I learned that any feelings were scary to her. And so I learned to be a good girl. And sometimes I would have big feelings and they'd sort of explode out. And she would just look at me like, Jenn, what is just, it's okay. Like, these little things would happen and I just would be crying upset. And she would just look at me like I was kind of this alien person. Like, anyway, so I learned really young to sort of not do that. And then so I was mostly with my mom. I was sometimes with my dad, and I was afraid of his anger. And so I was always perfect for my dad also. And when I was about 18, I figured out officially that I was gay, and my mom found out and disappeared to her room crying like she would. And so I once again felt like I was sort of too much for her to handle. So I started drinking, and alcohol was sort of the gateway to having a lot of fun. We'd go out dancing. We as in me and my friends, I had a fake ID. I'd go to bars and just get really drunk. I got to go to Italy. I drank a lot of wine in Italy. In my early 20s, I started to have consequences from drinking. I ended up in the hospital a couple of times because I do have type 1 diabetes, and I'd get these really gnarly hangovers where I couldn't stop throwing up. And if you get dehydrated when you have type 1 diabetes, it's not a good combination. So I ended up in the hospital a couple of times. One time in Ireland. And around, I think it was about 23 when I got a DUI, and I got sent to outpatient treatment. I'm worried I'm not going to be able to talk for 15 minutes, but we'll see. I got sent to outpatient treatment, and I was not convinced I had a problem. And even if I knew a little bit that I thought maybe I had a problem, I just really did not care because I was not done drinking. And so one of the counselors said, go try some controlled drinking. And so my mission in my 20s and 30s for about 20 years was to control my drinking. And prove essentially that I wasn't an alcoholic. I didn't want to be like my dad because he has a drinking problem. And so I took medication for years to sort of control my drinking. And it kind of worked It stopped me from blacking out, but it didn't take away the obsession of drinking. So I still drank every day. Um, and then, so let me back up. When I was around 30, I met my now wife. We're still together and we have two little boys. And I was drinking a lot and she's not a drinker. And so basically she said, you need to stop drinking or this isn't going to work. And so that was when I started taking the medication. And she has said that it actually did save our marriage because even though I was still drinking, it wasn't completely out of control. Um, that was like in my early 30s. And then we started trying to have babies. And so we have a 6-year-old now. Um, a few years ago, 2 years ago, I think, maybe 3 years ago now, we got pregnant and we found out that the baby had Down syndrome, and we had mixed feelings about that. We were so excited to meet him, but also heartbroken that he was going to be different. Um, we are both occupational therapists. She's a pediatric occupational therapist, so we thought that the universe had sort of chosen us for this baby. And I was at work when Sarah called and she had gone for an ultrasound and there was no heartbeat. She was 23 weeks. So we had to go to the hospital and deliver Levi, who was a stillborn. At that point, I had, since alcohol was sort of blunted or whatever, the effects were not there from the medication. I had discovered marijuana. And, going back to what I was talking about earlier about not wanting to have big feelings, I started to smoke a lot of weed all the time. Um, Weed sort of replaced alcohol, and Sarah knew that it had. And so after we lost Levi, I retreated into sort of an oblivion of video games and marijuana. And that went on for a while, to the point where my mom had said it looked like the lights have gone out. It just sort of gradually got worse, and I was working in home health care. I would go to work high sometimes. I was teaching people. I would get stoned before going to teach. It was sort of a mess. I also started going through patients' wallets. I describe that as like my attempt to just feel something, to feel anything. I was completely disconnected to who I was, and I think afraid to really. I had gotten to a place where I didn't really know what to do next. I either needed to move out of my house so that I could continue down this path of oblivion, I guess, or kill myself or get some help. And so what happened was I actually went one night I didn't go home. I started drinking in Tacoma, drank the whole way, and I just ended up driving to my best friend's house, and she's actually here tonight because she loves me still. And I was just loaded, and I ended up offering her 18-year-old daughter some weed or Adderall, and sort of thought, I mean, if I was 18, I would have loved somebody to offer that stuff to me. So anyway, so a couple of weeks later, she took me out, and I could tell she was going to talk to me about something. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is it? She's like, I need to talk to you something. And I said, I know, I smoke too much weed. And she's like, no, I mean, yes, but, and then she told me that she knew about what I had done. And so this was sort of it was 3 days later I was in rehab, because it was at this point I just was like, you know what, if I was myself and if I wasn't completely out of my fucking mind, I never would have done that. And so I continued to smoke weed. I was full of shame, and at this point I was staying in the spare room because my wife didn't want to see me if I was high, and I couldn't not be high. So she put me on a plane to go to rehab. I thought that I would go to rehab to learn how to not drink and smoke weed. I did not think I would go to rehab and learn how to be okay with that. And I sort of threw myself into rehab. I loved everything. I mean, that's not true. It was hard, and I cried the whole first week. But I did everything they told me to do, and I started reading the big book. And at one point, I was, having some feelings about something, and one of the nurses told me to. She just opened the book and she pointed to page 417, and most of you in this room probably know that that's where it says, "And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today." And so I read that whole paragraph, which blew my mind, and then I've continued to read that paragraph. Absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober. Unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and my attitudes. I was going to read this earlier too. He says, "For years, I was sure the worst thing that could happen to a nice guy like me would be that I would be an alcoholic." And again, I tried for 20 years to prove that I was not. But then he goes on to say, "Today I find it's the best thing that has ever happened to me." So this proves that I don't know what's good for me. I had a great experience in rehab. I learned how to not drink, but I got introduced to reintroduced. I had to go in my 20s and get my slip signed and sat in the back of the room with my arms. I didn't do anything. When I got home, I immediately went to a meeting in Burien. How many? 2 more minutes left? Okay, perfect. Okay. I went to a meeting and I texted my dad and he said, "Do 90 and 90. AA will refund your misery if you're not satisfied." And so I did 90 and 90. And I found a home group surprisingly on Zoom. It was the most welcoming meeting that I've been to a lot of meetings. It was just a great group of people. I found a sponsor there. My sponsor's here tonight. I don't know. I actually, I was insane, and now I'm not because of AA. I have, I think I'm working on my sixth step right now, writing out all of my character defects and my character assets, and I get to be with my kids and my family without wishing I was somewhere else, and without being just filled with self-loathing. I have learned that self-loathing and self-pity are a form of self-centeredness. I've talked about that with my dad and learned from him about that. Like, even me being nervous about talking at this meeting, I was like, "You're just being self-centered. Like, you're just doing this for other people. This has nothing to do with me." So I guess I will end by saying that I am extremely grateful for this program. I'm extremely grateful for my best friend, Heather, for calling me out of my shit, and for my dad, and for my sponsor. And I never thought I would be a grateful alcoholic, but I am a grateful alcoholic. It's taught me so much. Thank you.